I'll tell you, in 1954, when he was postdocing, he was almost nominated for a Nobel Prize for work on mitochondria. So he knows that part really well. And he's been, and the crossover point, he was a collaborator with George Brooks out of UC Berkeley, he's a physiologist, and he collaborated with Max Testa on the fatigue issue of calcium. And they're currently doing collaboration on calcium. He's Max's kind of go-to guy as an internist. So we're lucky to have him here. And I'm going to be, this is a hard act to follow because I do not have nearly the knowledge. I don't pretend to be a scientist or a doctor. I do have a college degree in biology, so I get, usually when I'm talking to Dr. Novazio or Dr. Finney or my friend Bruce about the science, I get the gist of it. And what we're going to talk about will take off from what Dr. Novazio was talking about. With the crossover point, he's explained the mechanism for glucose metabolism real well. But what you know is glucose is a very limited supply. And Bruce, let's go ahead and turn on and get the computer going. And we're going to talk about shifting that crossover point to where we take that base of fat. And I've been saying this for the last 2 years and 3 years. A couple of the people here in the first year, I was kind of pretty crude, but we're getting there, and next year will be even better. But we're learning a lot and getting a lot of really interesting results. And I've had the privilege of looking into some cutting-edge research that's going on right now using cell membrane compositions. There's been some new techniques developed for looking at cell membranes, and then there's some new stuff in the last 10 years that have developed about theories about cholesterol levels in the blood and all that. So
that should go away.
That should go. Go full screen. So we're going to talk tonight about optimizing your fat metabolism. Now, this isn't low carb, although we use some certain tenets of it, which is one of the things being nutritional ketosis. Because as athletes, one of the wonderful things, and this is a clue that Dr. Novazio gave me years ago, is that athleticism at the level you guys are doing is wonderful for both glucose control and insulin sensitivity. So we don't eliminate carbs like in a low-carb diet. We use them strategically. We found that using the product I distribute, Vespa, which is a naturally occurring peptide of amino acids that we literally get from a wasp that burns fat as fuel, that and shifts in the diet and training to increase that envelope. We've had athletes that are both cyclists. I've worked with Pro Tour people in Europe. I've worked with a lot of mountain bikers. I don't know if anybody, you guys know Ethan Passant or Yari Kirkland. And we've seen some pretty strong results, and we're seeing a lot of results in the ultra running and marathon, and just this spring the triathlon community has really started to catch on, and Jamie is one of the guys that drank the Kool-Aid, and I don't think he's going back, are you?
No.
So, go ahead, Bruce. So, we're going to do the Monty Python take here. So, the conventional wisdom has, you know, that the world was flat. People believe that. We also thought that the sun revolved around the earth. And that was wrong. We also believe that the new economy and the housing bubble would never burst. Okay? So conventional wisdom says that a high carbohydrate diet and avoiding saturated fats and cholesterol is healthy. Most of us in this room probably believe that. So, why do birds do it? We've got Canadian geese fly thousands of miles on fat. Bees, wasps, ants, and termites. Go ahead, Bruce. And wasp. This is the wasp we actually get the peptide from. That wasp actually flies 60 to 100 kilometers a day and carries a third to half its body weight in food back to the colony. And it gets this peptide from the larva. And this is a function called trophallaxis, which is a symbiotic relationship between two life stages of insects. And bees, ants, wasps, and termites all have this. And they're all known as super endurance, super strength animals. And ants. And Inuit. The Inuit have a diet that's roughly 70 to 80% fat and moderate protein and almost no carbohydrates. Yet they don't have a lot of the health issues we normally see. Go ahead, Bruce. And the Maasai. The Maasai live on dairy products, meat, and milk and eggs, very little concentrated carbohydrates. In fact, the Maasai have 5 times the saturated fat intake of the average American. And yet you cannot find heart disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, cancer in their native population. As soon as that Maasai goes on a Western diet and a Western lifestyle, which means less exercise, a higher carbohydrate load, their epidemiology mimics that of the African American population of the US. Right? The American Indians. The Plains Indians lived on buffalo, and their diet consisted of roughly 78% fat and 10 to 20% protein and very little carbohydrate. And they, at the time, there's some new anthropological studies coming out that at the time of the settling of the American continent, the Americas, they were the tallest, fittest, fiercest humans walking the earth. And journals by soldiers and doctors who live with these kind of corroborate all this evidence. So I'm trying to get you guys to have more questions than answers. I'm not the guy that's going to have a quick, simple answer. What my hope is that you'll take away more questions from this presentation than answers. Go ahead, Bruce. So what's happened? Fast food, junk food, calories, not enough exercise, saturated fats and cholesterols. Whereas their bodies are compromised at burning fat as fuel. So go to the next one. So this is something, I've got this book here, and I've got several copies, so if anybody wants to read it, I've got copies here. In chapter, I think, 6, they discuss the basics of human fuel partitioning. And I've used this as a visual thing because it's not exactly correct, and forgive me, Dr. Novazio, because I'm not going to be totally correct, but sort of, not wrong, but not...
Ego ti absolvo.
Okay, grazie
In
mille.
Latin.
Okay, but here, and I hope to illuminate some real basics of human physiology. Our bodies basically like having about 40 calories of free glucose in circulation. That's normal, stable blood sugar. That amounts to about 2.5 teaspoons of, in terms of glucose, it's 2.5 teaspoons. So that's stable blood sugar. Have a bagel. What have you done? You've multiplied your blood sugar levels 5-fold. Go ahead, Bruce. Or a plate of spaghetti. Again, because what happens is that starch converts into glucose in your blood. So we all know sugar's bad, right? But we don't know that a lot of these starches, particularly grain-based starches, particularly wheat, converts very quickly into glucose because the starches are glucose molecules. And particularly wheat, and I don't want to get too much down on wheat because we all eat it, and I eat it too, but wheat is made up of a starch called amylopectin. The amylopectin breaks down really quickly in your system. And it actually, some people have seen that their blood sugar will spike more eating 2 pieces of whole grain toast than a Snickers bar because of the starch breakdown. Now, what does that do? Let's shoot your blood sugar way up. And as Dr. Novazio said, go ahead, Bruce. So what we're doing is we're literally flooding our body with bloodstream with glucose. Next slide. So insulin comes to rescue, and that's the key. So one of the things that Dr. Novazio said to me years ago is before the discovery of insulin, when a type 1 diabetic was having an attack, the protocol was to get them to go literally run as hard as they could or exercise as hard as they could. Because, as I said earlier, being athletic is one of the best ways to maintain
Excuse me, not an attack. It was
no,
found that if you had a diabetic individual run, the
blood sugar stabilized.
Would come down.
Yep. So this is what happens. So glucose, I want you guys to know, I don't think glucose is bad at all. It's just doing its job. And that's what its job is to get the blood sugar down immediately. Because you eat a bunch of pasta or a bunch of carbohydrates, your blood sugar goes really high. And when you're young and your hormones are raging and you're very insulin sensitive, it takes it down with very little. Insulin does very fine. But, go ahead, next. There's a but there. Insulin triggers lipogenesis, okay, and much more. This is where the, right now this is a work in progress. So what it does is and this is where it gets really interesting. So your blood sugar gets way up, and and most of us aren't eating, we aren't going to go for a run or a bike ride right afterwards, right? We're not going to eat a bagel and then jump on our bike and go haul ass, okay? So when we're in our daily diet, we have this huge rise in insulin. If we eat a lot of carbohydrates, our body has to get that blood sugar down. And if we're diabetic and we don't get insulin into us, we die, okay? But if normally our bodies take care of it, we don't really notice that. But what happens is the body has to take it down, take that blood sugar down in a variety of ways. One is it turns off the liver. Well, let's go to your body starts using glucose for brain and nervous system, just glucose. It doesn't use ketone bodies. Any muscle metabolism, it'll use the glucose. But then it also goes to the liver. And as Dr. Navazio pointed out, how many of you guys think the liver is a filter? Isn't that kind of a common term? Well, think more of the liver as the body's alchemist, okay? Because what the liver does is it converts things. Dr. Navazio pointed out, it takes lactate, converts it back to glucose, and even converts it further into glycogen. Well,